On behalf of the province and obviously our Premier, I want to welcome everyone here today, and I've had the opportunity in the past to address this organization, but today is a little different format. We have some special guests with us. We have obviously our MP, Sean Casey, we have Mayor Lee, and we have some other senior officials with us as well to give their points of view and share their thoughts as well. So on behalf of the province, looking for a very interesting conversation and dialogue. And the last time I spoke to you, I think you worked me over pretty good, so I'm expecting a good hammer here today. So welcome. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Minister Curry. Now I'd like to call on Mayor Clifford Lee to bring greetings on behalf of the city.
Thank you very much. I do want to as well recognize Minister Doug, MP Sean, Councillors Danny Redmond and Eddie Rice are with us as well. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, welcome to Charlottetown. I certainly am pleased to be here. I'm not quite sure why the Mayor of Charlottetown is going to be talking about health care and pensions, but I'm looking forward to the discussion. And again, welcome to Charlottetown. And again, the issues before us, I think, are very important issues as we move forward as a community, as a country. And again, thank you.
Mesdames et messieurs, merci d'être ici et merci de faire partie de cette conversation. That was just a tidbit for the francophones in the room. I want to sincerely thank you for being here and being part of this very important conversation. The National Association of Federal Retirees is an organization that does advocacy on behalf of federal public servants, retired of course, RCMP, Canadian Forces, as well as federally appointed judges. We are 185,000 strong, and we have presence across the country through 83 branches that are managed by volunteers, and we also have a national office in Ottawa, and as somebody reminded me earlier, we're here to help. FSNA is a not-for-profit. We have as key priorities for our association the vision excuse me, of elevating retirement income and health security in retirement for all Canadians, not just public servants or RCMP or Canadian Forces. Our members believe that having open, vibrant conversations, and we're kicking it off in PEI, and I thought, wow, you know, PEI, this is the bed of so many great files for our country for centuries, and I think this is just fantastic that is starting in PEI. We want to identify the issues that are facing Canadians, and as you know, our pension system right now needs help, and so does our healthcare system. FSNA wants to be part of that voice that finds solutions for all of us. Today's town hall meeting is the first in a series of national town hall meetings. We'll be taking this across the country, so no pressure on you. Let's make this absolutely excellent and the model for the rest of the country. And we are bringing not only government officials, but of course corporate Canada and citizens, as well as our members, to be part of this conversation.
Now I'm going to begin, and this is a weighty conversation, particularly here in PEI. The biggest demographic wave since the post-war baby boom is about to break over all of Canada. And all orders of government need to be ready. Mr. Lee, you questioned why municipal was here when we're talking about healthcare and retirement income. At the end of the day, as the leader of a city, much of the burden often falls to the city. Cities are limited in their ability to raise money other than through raising taxes, both on residents and commercial. So we need to be looking at what solutions can be provided for communities to help support the provinces and the nation in trying to ensure that our seniors have the adequate health care, the right health care, that we can afford the health care, and that they have incomes that are adequate for them in retirement. I'd like to start today's conversation by discussing whether the provinces and the cities are ready for this, in terms of both providing adequate health care and retirement income security for their residents. And before I hand it over, I'd also like to hear from each of you what you believe the federal government's role should be, particularly in light of the fact that the federal government has made it clear that they believe their role is limited only to providing funding. As a result, we've seen the Canada Health Accord die.
Obviously, as the minister, if you sort of take a step back and take a look at publicly funded Medicare in the province of Prince Edward Island, which is obviously part of the umbrella of the Canada's Health Act, which relates to our country. Publicly funded Medicare was introduced to Canada in the late 50s, and it was built on a premise that the average male and female Canadian were approximately 28 years of age. At that time, there was an agreement in place between the provinces and the territories and the federal government that it was built on 50-cent dollars. Well, it's a different day today. Our baby boomers are cruising through our system between the ages of 50 at the back end and 70. So the way healthcare is delivered and the way we present and provide healthcare has evolved and will continue to evolve and has evolved. If you look at when healthcare was introduced, hospitals were built, you walked in the emergency room, you either got sent home or they put you in a bed, then you got sent home. Well, it's a different world today. We have issues around, obviously, when you walk into hospitals, the shift now is swinging away and trying to protect our acute care beds for our most sick Islanders and most sick Canadians. Obviously, there was a commentary about, in 2011, in the fall of 2011, we went to the FBT meetings in Halifax, where there was a lot of national conversations around the 2014 Health Accord, which as ministers, I was very optimistic about even strengthening the partnership between the provinces, the territories, and the federal government, which there was a commitment at that point in time. Probably about a month after that, obviously the late finance minister, Jim Flaherty, presented the envelopes to our finance ministers and moved to a transfer payment discussion and format in respect to our health discussions. So that ended the 2014 Health Accord.
And what do you see the challenges for you in a community?
I think the challenges for all of us really is, I think we need to look at the whole taxation system in this country. For every dollar that's collected in taxes, the government of Canada collects 50 cents. In PEI, the province gets 46 cents and municipalities get 4 cents of every dollar collected. And I can use today's opportunity to talk with my Deputy Minister of Municipal Affairs, who's with us, about how unfair that is to municipalities. But ladies and gentlemen, at some point we need to stop pointing the finger at different levels of government, and we really all need to get in the same room, have the discussion on health care. And we need to, I think quite honestly, sit down and have the serious discussion of, as Canadians, what is it we want our health care to be? I honestly don't believe, and I'm sure Minister Doug would agree, that PEI is never going to be able to provide the level of services in the hospitals that the larger centres provide. We're 140,000 people. And we can't, I don't think the healthcare system in this province can sustain us being able to do everything for everybody. So we're probably going to always use healthcare facilities in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, because to me that makes sense from a financial perspective. But until we come together and we discuss, the causes of poverty, how we address that, because poverty tends to lead you into, housing issues where people are living in substandard housing, which causes illnesses. It causes people to become addicted to issues because that's how they choose to deal with the cards they've been dealt with in life. And I just think there's a much bigger discussion. And and honestly, I know we're talking to a group of people who are retired employees, but at the same time, I don't see that as a negative. In fact, this country, this city, this province really is what you people have made it. And it's our responsibility as elected officials now to stand up and to ensure that services that you need are there when you need them.
And Sean, your thoughts. You've heard from the province and we've heard municipally. And there's a belief that the conversation needs to happen with the federal government, the provinces, and including and bringing to the table municipalities. What are your thoughts in terms of what's going on right now and what the future could look like and what some of the solutions could be?
Well, what's going on right now in Ottawa is really a single-minded focus on balancing the budget, and absolutely everything else is second or third or fourth. That's the environment that we're in now, and I expect that the tap is going to be turned on again as we turn the corner for the election. To hear Minister Curry talk about the basis for the relationship between the federal and the provincial government and the history behind it, back in the days of Pierre Trudeau, the split in funding federal and provincial was about 50-50. And the federal portion has gradually gone down to the point now where I think, if I heard the numbers correctly, the federal government contribution to PEI is about $130 million on over $600 million budget. So we're in the 20% range now. And that 20% range is at that number in part because of an agreement that was signed in 2004, the 2004 Health Accord, that put in a 6% escalator that's now gone. One of the things that I consistently hear both in Ottawa and when I go door to door here is the federal government has abandoned its role in healthcare, except to the extent of writing a check. So what we constantly hear is that the federal government and the provincial government both have a role to play. The federal government partially funds, the provincial government delivers, and so if you ask someone in the federal government, you ask the health minister in Ottawa about an issue with respect to health care, the answer is we respect provincial jurisdiction. So not our problem. And part of the issue, and of course part of the issue, and Minister Curry certainly said it more eloquently than I could, but on the one hand you have the federal government saying if there are problems in healthcare, they're all related to how the province is delivering the service. All too often you hear the province say, well, a big part of the problem in healthcare is that we're not getting enough money. It's high time that the partnership that Minister Curry called for happens.
The reality is there is no system. There are 10 or 11 now different systems that are supposed to be integrated so that they work one with the other. Well, that's not true. That's the first point. The second point is Tommy Douglas never included in his original manifesto the whole question of an aging population. And consequently, the seniors population, as they grow older and more infirm, such as I, find it increasingly difficult and very costly to find themselves, I can only use the word interred in a long-term care facility. And I think that Mr. Curry and his colleagues and Sean Casey and his colleagues and people of all stripes should be striving for an integrated, coordinated healthcare system in this country that is equal in all respects, whether you live in Corner Brook, Newfoundland, or Esquimalt, British Columbia. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be here. First of all, it's always good to talk to seniors. One, they're retired. They got a lot of time on their hands and they can create a lot of shit. And I mean that all in that category. There's no question, I think, in the context of this discussion, it's vital in terms of the role each one of you could play. Because for the most part, in addition to your personal day-to-day challenges, we need to talk about the next generation, and that will be your kids and your grandkids, and that's fundamental to the challenge we're going to face. Let me start by also acknowledging the important role you've played in building this country. Too often that doesn't get acknowledged, and all of you in your individual way has made this country a great place, and I'm hoping the part I can do in regard to my role as a Congress president is to ensure that seniors who will become in your place, and I will join you eventually, that this country is still a great place to live for all of us, regardless of whether you had the good fortune of making lots of money or not, because I think we all need to have dignity when we retire in this country, regardless of what income level you might be.
The second area that I think that the federal government has a role to play is in universal and portable pension plans. There are all kinds of people who work for 5 or 10 years for a company, and they do pay in to a pension plan, and they move on to another job. And in most cases what they do is they take their portion of the pension and they roll it over into a personal income or a personal RRSP. And what they do by doing that is they're handing back the employer their portion. So I've worked for you for 10 years, you've contributed some to my pension, I've contributed, I change jobs, and you get your money back. And I get to roll my portion over to an RRSP on which I will be taxed at some future date. So to me, part of the federal government role should be that they would create a portable pension plan for all Canadians, and that would be a great way to enhance future income.
Individuals left to save on their own for retirement will do a very poor job. That's been the history. No matter what we tell each other, we all never think we're going to get old until we find out, 5 weeks or 6 weeks before retirement, oh my God, I need to check to see what my pension is going to be. I was one of those people when I was young, was told I had to contribute to the pension plan. I kind of looked at the person who said to me, I say, you mad? He says, no, I'm not mad, Hassan. You got to learn one thing. You eventually get old. I said, I'm 18 years of age. When would I get old? Of course, I'm closer to that age now, so I know I'm going to get old. But my point is that at the time when I was asked to make a decision, which was not for me to make, I mean, the membership made it on behalf of the entire bargaining unit, I was not predisposed to say we should contribute more to the pension plan. It was a dumb decision. It was a stupid decision. Ultimately, there are people with greater wisdom than me that made the right decision. I'm a benefactor of it today. So I know I'll have a good pension because other people made that decision. But in a systematic way across this country, when Canadians are asked to save for their retirement, for the most part, many of us do really badly. And it's not a lack of education. I think we got different priorities. Different stage in our life, pensions is not a priority. Raising a family, buying a house, paying for your kids' tuition, that becomes our priority. And by the time we realize that we should be saving for retirement, the one thing that has worked in this country, which has been the great equalizer, is the CPP. Because you don't have a choice whether you contribute to it. And I think fundamentally we've got to find a better way to, of course, help Canadians as a whole save better for their retirement, because not every workplace has a workplace pension. And the reality is for many Canadians, 12 million that doesn't have a workplace pension, this is going to be a real challenge. Canadians without, of course, a workplace pension, more importantly, mostly women, fare very badly because they have interruptions in the workplace, sometimes having childbearing age. They disrupt their work life, and more importantly, it's critical that this factor be acknowledged in regards to how we structure retirement, because too often than not, women, when they do become single or they become divorced, are not in the same position as their partners in terms of what their benefit level is, and we got to find a better way how we incorporate that. We did get there now for quite some time, going back here in PEI in 2010, and we've kept the equation. Despite all the finance ministers have come and gone, we've kept that equation there, and that's a unique thing. It's a large part to do with the pressure we've been able to keep. But more importantly, I think the point that you're raising, I think employers get it. I've certainly been spending a lot of my time talking to the employers at the federal level. These are big employers. The telecommunication company, the railway company, and others. The reality is they get it. They recognize that if we're able to increase the CPP level of benefit, it will take pressures off their private plan. They recognize that. And the cost for doing that is relatively small. I know we've got to do more work to keep that conversation going, but there's a clear recognition that this is a moment when they can do something to help themselves, much less to help their employees. By providing for their employees to have a better plan, it's a good thing, and ultimately at some point it will reduce their cost they've got their private plans as to what the differences they would have to make up to bring that medium income up to a large extent. There is a reality to this, I think, and that's the point. Is there a cost to employers to participate in this? The answer is yes. what Sheridan and others have suggested, we will phase this process in over a period of time. And by doing that, there will be no shock to the economy. The cost will be minimal that the employer would have to bear, as it would be the employee. And I've contextualized this in a very small way. It would be less than a small Tim Hortons coffee per day. Now that's the fact. That is the fact. That's what it would cost you to contribute for a better pension going forward.
I just have this is a really good discussion. Unfortunately, there isn't somebody in the room that should be here to hear it. You asked who's missing, and I know you were thinking in terms of corporate Canada, but I'm thinking in terms of the federal government. We have no federal representation here from the federal government level. Really glad to have Sean Casey here. He did a good job. Very, very pleased to have him participating. But where's the minister? Where's Gail Shea? Where's somebody representing the federal government? They need to hear this discussion, and they're not here.
And I would actually like to address that point, and thank you for bringing it up. I was going to make the statement at the closing of this. We have certainly made every effort to invite the current government to attend these conversations. We will continue to ask them to participate in these conversations. But I do have something to ask of every one of you, and that is that you also ask them to participate in these conversations. This is only the first of many across the country. We also will be reaching back out to communities where we've held these conversations and asking you to talk to your representative in your community and hold them to some of the solutions.
We have to have a system that definitely guarantees the minimum amount that's required to live with dignity. And I don't see any need of any government if they can't do that. They have to do it. There's no guesswork on it. And we need a health care that was instituted some 50 odd years ago that has a 50-50 partnership, or the Liberals and the Conservatives are the ones that have gutted it. Both of them should go, if that's the case. Thank you.
I think we need to take a bit of care when we, criticism is fair, and I'll be the first one to criticize government. But I think the system we have built, which is going to serve many of you in this room and will serve the next generation, we need to have some faith it can be made better. But the reality in terms of pension, because we're living longer, unless you're going to save a lot of money, which I'm sure most of us here, if we're very rich, you wouldn't be listening to me right now. The reality is we're not saving enough. The average savings for Canadians right now in the RSP account is about $60,000. 1/3 of the population actually have no savings in their account. 1/3 of the population, no savings. So when they get to retirement, I don't know what's going to happen. We've got a looming crisis, and fundamentally, unfortunately, while you may not be directly benefiting from the CPP changes, I can tell you this: your kids, your grandkids, your nieces and nephew are the ones that are going to benefit. And unlike anybody else, we're going to have to fight to improve and help that next generation. And I think we can do this collectively. I also think it's the right thing for us to do, because the will by provincial governments to see this happen is there. The one government that's opposed to see any improvement to the Canada Pension Plan and retirement income in this country is the federal government. And unless we change this government, that will not change at the end of the day, because they think somehow magically we're all going to get rich and we'll be provided for retirement. It ain't going to happen. And I think fundamentally in the next election, I think this has to be an election issue, because if we don't fix it, I can tell you we'll have the conversation 5 years from now, 10 years in this room. It will be that much worse, not that much better.
Just as an aside, I am a business person. I have almost 100 employees in a family company, and I think the initiative that Minister Sheridan's making on the Canada Pension Plan improvements is fantastic. And I think anybody in business who's saying it's too expensive, they can't afford it, is all wet. Anybody who's down to 5 cents or a nickel an hour is going out of business anyway. And I it's very frustrating as an employer to have people working for 30 years and not have enough pension income to work. So I applaud that initiative as a business person.
So we've heard from the government about health care and what they believe the issues are. We've certainly had questions asked of the audience. Based on what we've heard and what we know, do you believe that the provinces the cities are ready for what we have coming to face us in the future? And what do you think we can do in terms of solutions to make things work for not only our current residents, but future generations?
I guess I just echo that there is probably a menu of options that will be successful in various areas in Canada, and we can learn from each other as to some of the characteristics of what works well. Probably one of the litmus tests is having more and more frank conversations about our health care with the community, because the eyes of a planner in their 30s will not have the same perspective as a home care recipient in their 80s. And language is important. Just a brief aside that we've sometimes read the phrase, keeping seniors in their home, which could be a good thing, or it could be a socially isolating and dangerous thing if there aren't sufficient supports and care and caregivers trained to take on roles as caregivers. Whereas planning for aging in place engages the seniors and their support system and the health system in developing a plan that is acceptable to the individual. You know, home care is an exciting opportunity, but we have to think about that carefully, about changing the sanctity of the home into a place where health care will be delivered, and embark on those things cautiously into the future.
Well, I can tell you this. My family are spread across the country just to seek employment. They are also trying to pay off, and have successfully now in their late 30s paid off a high student debt loan. I live alone in my home, and they have come and taken time off at great expense to themselves in terms of transportation and time off from work to spend time with me when I recovered from hip surgery. My son is coming home because he's the closest to spend a week with me after I have a cataract surgery. My neighbors and friends have been very helpful too, but at some point, I think most of us as seniors who have been pretty independent, we don't want to have our families and our neighbors and friends always volunteering their time, because they have responsibilities too and families to look after and their own concerns, and not that much money. So somewhere there has to be this little happy medium where I try to pay people to help me on a low fixed income. The rest of it I just let go. But I think that they will get right back to the, excuse me, the issue of not having enough money. And that is the issue.
Yeah. And I've seen both sides of this. Yeah, yes, it's about money, but if one thing I think there's no question that Canada seems to have, in my experience, is there's a culture there that's receptive to this. And it's that there's resources there to be harnessed, not to burden, but to harness and to support. Now we can start locally and then let it spread nationally, but I don't know how we can't get through this without some level of co-responsibility. That's all I'm saying. Now that doesn't mean it's not going to be easy, and not every solution, there's not going to be one solution you can take down from the shelf and apply to everybody. Some people aren't going to have the resources, some people don't have the family. So you have to have that flexibility and that nimbleness in the system. But I have a high degree of confidence that this culture can get there. It just has to have the resolve to do it, and I think that's been echoed before by other panelists.
How do we come together to find those solutions? And as you said, you know, the end-of-life conversation needs to happen, but we need to have those conversations as well.
Good question. And I shared a little bit prior to one of the issues that I've been focusing on is the minister, obviously, besides being the minister of the province, trying to push the federal government to re-engage, but not necessarily from we need more, but continuing to ask them to say, listen, we need a partnership, no different than the partnership we need with MSPEI. It has to be focused on the objectives and goals of what the current realities are and how can we get to a better place to make sure. At the end of the day, it's about the appropriate services to the individual who's walking in the facility, and we're there to meet them and we provide the care they need in a timely fashion. Okay, that's one. Innovation, I think, is a huge opportunity. I think the federal government is missing an opportunity to partner with the provinces to say, listen, we're prepared to put $5 billion on the side to say provinces that are specializing in doing unique work in primary health care or diabetes management. Here's the resources, but you'll get the money based on the implementation of the work. You have to show evidence that it's getting outcomes to improve the health of your population. And you know, we need to continue to like ramp up all our healthcare capacity.
And I would actually like to take this opportunity to thank all of our panelists, because I think this discussion has been fantastic. And I would like to thank every one of you for coming out today and for having the conversation with us. Please stay in touch with us. You have our website address. We have community conversations that will be online. Please complete your workbook. There's a box out front that if you could place the workbook in, or if you would like to take it home, please mail it back to us. Our address is there for you. Or as we mentioned earlier, go online. But to all of the panelists, I truly appreciate the time you've taken to have this conversation, and I hope you'll stay in the conversation. Thank you. And Mayor Clifford Olson, who I'm sure I don't actually have to introduce. So, I think you might have to. You know when you tell yourself whatever you do, don't say it? I just said it.